The Amityville Horror, the true story behind the haunting. A family fled their dream home in 28 days, leaving everything behind. What drove them out still waits inside. Long Island's South Shore, communities sprawl peacefully along waterways that empty into the Atlantic. Sailboats dot the harbors. Children ride bicycles down tree-lined streets. Among these neighborhoods sits Amityville, New York, a name that carries weight far beyond its modest geographic footprint. At the center of that weight stands a Dutch colonial house at what was once 112 Ocean Avenue, a structure that became the focal point of what many consider the most famous haunting case in American history. The nightmare begins not with supernatural forces, but with human violence. On November 13, 1974, Ronald DeFeo, Jr., moves through the darkened hallways of his family home carrying a rifle. In the hours that follow, 6 people perish in their beds: his parents, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters. What strikes investigators immediately is the position of the bodies. All 6 victims lie face down, apparently having never stirred, never cried out, never attempted to flee despite the sound of gunshots echoing through the house. The scene defies logical explanation. How does an entire family fail to react as violence unfolds room by room? DeFeo offers an answer that the courts reject, but that sets the stage for everything that follows. He claims voices in the house commanded him to commit the acts. He describes an overwhelming compulsion, a presence that drove him forward against his own will. The jury finds him guilty of 6 counts of second-degree murder. He receives 6 consecutive life sentences. The house on Ocean Avenue sits empty, its history now permanently stained, its market value plummeting. 13 months pass. George and Kathy Lutz view the property with a real estate agent who discloses its recent history. The price sits well below market value. The house itself is beautiful, 3 stories, distinctive eye-shaped windows on the upper floor, a boathouse along the canal behind the property. George and Kathy have 3 children from Kathy's previous marriage. They need space. They need affordability. They purchase 112 Ocean Avenue in December 1975, aware of what happened there, believing they can move past it. The first night in the house, George Lutz wakes at exactly 3:15 in the morning. The next night, the same thing happens. It continues every single night they remain in the house, 3:15 a.m., precise to the minute, the exact time the DeFeo murders had taken place. George rises from bed gripped by compulsion he cannot explain, drawn to check doors and windows, to pace the rooms, to sit and stare into darkness. His personality begins to shift. The warm, gregarious man Kathy married becomes cold, withdrawn, prone to sudden anger. His temper frightens the children. Kathy watches her husband transform into someone she barely recognizes. Kathy's own experiences begin with dreams. She sees the murders unfolding, witnesses the violence room by room, as if she stands invisible in the hallway watching it happen. She wakes to the sensation of being touched, of hands moving across her body, though no one visible is present. The terror in her dreams begins to bleed into her waking hours. The house feels hostile, watching, waiting. The children report an invisible companion. They call it Jody. They describe it as pig-like, something that appears at a window and communicates with them. George investigates and finds nothing visible, but the children insist. They speak to Jody regularly. They relay messages from it. The entity becomes a regular presence in their daily routine, though only the children claim to see it clearly. Physical manifestations escalate. A green slime begins appearing on walls, oozing from keyholes and dripping down surfaces. It has no apparent source. It reappears even after being cleaned. In the sewing room on the 2nd floor, swarms of flies gather despite the fact that winter has settled over Long Island and temperatures outside drop below freezing. The flies cluster on windows, cover walls, reappear in impossible numbers. Traditional explanations fail. There is no rot, no food source, no logical reason for their presence. George witnesses a hooded figure standing near the fireplace in the living room. It appears solid, physical, present, then vanishes. Kathy levitates off the bed, while George watches in horror, her body rising into the air and hovering as if lifted by invisible hands. The event lasts long enough for George to fully process what he is seeing before she drops back to the mattress. The basement contains a small room painted entirely red. The family discovers it during their initial exploration of the house. The space feels wrong immediately, oppressive, thick with a presence that makes breathing difficult. The family dog, ordinarily fearless and curious, refuses to enter the room. It plants its feet at the threshold and will not be coaxed or commanded forward. The family begins avoiding the space entirely. Father Mancuso, a local Catholic priest, agrees to bless the house at the Lutz family's request. He arrives, begins the blessing ritual, and is struck across the face by an invisible force. A voice speaks directly to him, commanding him to leave the property immediately. Father Mancuso flees. Within days, he falls seriously ill, suffering symptoms that doctors struggle to diagnose or treat effectively. 28 days after moving into 112 Ocean Avenue, the Lutz family flees in the middle of the night. They take nothing with them. Their possessions, their furniture, their belongings, everything remains in the house. They simply run, driven out by an escalating series of phenomena they can no longer endure. They never return. Word of the Amityville case spreads. Ed and Lorraine Warren, paranormal investigators who have built a reputation examining cases of alleged demonic activity, travel to Long Island to investigate the property. They interview the Lutz family extensively, documenting their experiences in detail. They enter 112 Ocean Avenue themselves to conduct a formal investigation. Lorraine Warren describes the house as one of the most oppressively evil locations she has ever entered. She senses a demonic intelligence within the structure, something ancient and deeply entrenched. This is not a residual haunting, not the confused spirit of a murder victim replaying trauma. This is an active, purposeful entity with hostile intent. Lorraine feels it watching them, assessing them, radiating malevolence. Ed Warren develops a theory that chills everyone involved. He proposes that the entity may have influenced Ronald DeFeo directly, that the murders themselves were orchestrated by something that wanted blood spilled in that house. The voices DeFeo described were not delusion or legal strategy, but genuine communication from an inhuman presence that manipulated him into committing violence. The murders provided the entity with exactly what it needed: trauma, suffering, death saturating the location and amplifying whatever dark energy already existed there. Photographer Gene Campbell sets up time-lapse camera equipment overnight during the Warren investigation. The goal is to capture any visual anomalies that might manifest when the house sits empty and undisturbed. When the film is developed, one image stands out immediately. On the staircase, clearly visible in the frame, appears what looks like a small boy with glowing eyes staring directly at the camera. No one was present in the house when the photograph was taken. The image becomes one of the most analyzed and debated pieces of evidence in paranormal investigation history. Ed Warren categorizes the entity at 112 Ocean Avenue as demonic, a classification he reserves for the most dangerous cases in his files. This is not simply a haunting. It is an active infestation, a purposeful intelligence that demonstrates the ability to influence human behavior, to manifest physically, to drive people from the location through escalating psychological and physical attacks. George Lutz's personality change, Kathy's levitation, the apparitions, the physical phenomena all point to something with significant power and clear hostile intent. Father Mancuso's attempted blessing failed. The Catholic Church, after reviewing the case, declines to perform a formal exorcism on the property. The Lutz family never returns. The house changes hands multiple times in the years that follow. Subsequent owners report varying degrees of unexplained activity, though none match the intensity of the Lutz experience. Some owners report nothing unusual at all, leading skeptics to question the original account. The house itself undergoes physical changes. The distinctive eye-shaped windows on the upper floor, visible in photographs from the Lutz occupation and featured prominently in media coverage, are removed during renovations. The address is officially changed to discourage the constant stream of curiosity seekers and paranormal enthusiasts who make pilgrimages to the location. The modifications attempt to distance the property from its history to allow it to exist as simply another house on another Long Island street. No formal exorcism is ever performed. Ed Warren maintains throughout his life that without proper religious intervention, whatever inhabited 112 Ocean Avenue remains there still, dormant perhaps, but present. He describes the location as genuinely dangerous, a place where demonic energy has taken root so deeply that simple blessings and passive measures prove insufficient. The Amityville Horror enters popular culture with explosive force. Jay Anson publishes the Lutz family's account in 1977, and the book becomes the best-selling paranormal case study in American history. Hollywood produces film adaptations that spawn sequels, remakes, and an entire franchise that continues decades later. The case introduces Ed and Lorraine Warren to mainstream American audiences for the first time, establishing them as the preeminent paranormal investigators in the country. Debate surrounds the case from the beginning. Skeptics point to inconsistencies in the Lutz testimony, to financial pressures the family faced, to the convenient timing of their story following the DeFeo murders. Believers point to Father Mancuso's documented illness, to the photographs from the Warren investigation, to the consistency of the family's account across multiple retellings. The truth becomes obscured by media attention, by lawsuits, by the sheer volume of commentary and analysis the case generates. What remains undisputed are certain foundational facts. The DeFeo murders happened. 6 people perished in their beds in that house on November 13, 1974. The Lutz family did purchase the property and did vacate it after less than a month. Father Mancuso did fall ill after visiting the location. The photograph from Gene Campbell's camera does exist, regardless of interpretation. Ed Warren did investigate the case and did maintain for the rest of his life that the house represented one of the most genuinely dangerous locations he had ever encountered. The legacy of 112 Ocean Avenue extends beyond the immediate case. It shapes public perception of haunted locations, establishes templates for how paranormal investigations are conducted and documented, influences how the media portrays supernatural events. It raises questions about the relationship between violence and supernatural activity, about whether places can absorb trauma and radiate it back into the world. It forces consideration of whether some locations become so saturated with darkness that they cannot be cleansed, cannot be reclaimed, cannot return to normal function no matter who occupies them or what measures are taken. The house still stands, people live there, life continues on that street in Amityville, but the name carries weight that time has not diminished. The case remains reference material for paranormal investigators worldwide. The debates continue among believers and skeptics, and somewhere in the files maintained by the Warren legacy, 112 Ocean Avenue holds a permanent place as a location where something genuinely inhuman made itself known, where a family fled in terror, and where answers remain frustratingly incomplete. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.